It's a bitter little world indeed. One of the most memorable lines in noir, courtesy of Daniel Fuchs and Joan Bennett. In fact, we've used it for years as the catchphrase of the Film Noir Foundation, which rescues and restores lost and damaged films. No rescue for John Muller, however. In noir, you can steal another man's life, but you can't escape your fate. The shadows are always closing in, especially if the cameraman is John Alton. Now, I've noted this before when we've shown other Alton photographed movies, but it's worth repeating. John Alton rarely worked for big studios, preferring the latitude he was given on lower budget productions. He was typically the highest paid member of the crew, and that includes the director, because he was so well organized and so fast, he inevitably ended up saving producers a lot of money. He rarely, if ever, made use of the overhead lighting grids on studio sets. Instead, he'd light scenes with practicals, lights that have an actual source within the scene, as well as a few mobile key lights he'd deploy for dramatic effect. His approach, needless to say, did not make Alton popular with unionized crews, all those grips and gaffers who got paid by the hour. Left to his own devices, which many directors were eager to do, Alton could invariably shave days off a production schedule and still turn in a visually stunning movie. Hollow Triumph is something of an anomaly on the resume of screenwriter Daniel Fuchs. Plot gimmicks and risky twists were not really his thing. If Fuchs had a specialty in Hollywood, it was writing compassionately about characters trying to survive in a world of crime and corruption. It's a place Fuchs literally came from, growing up on rough Brooklyn streets, and that's the world he wrote about in a trio of excellent novels that earned him a crack at real money in Hollywood: Summer in Williamsburg, Homage to Blenholt, and Low Company. These were all books born of his Depression-era experiences in the 1930s. Fuchs always wrote with empathy for his hard-scrabble characters and their bitter struggles, whether it was in backstage melodramas like The Hard Way, classic noirs like Hollow Triumph, Crisscross, and Panic in the Streets, or a musical noir hybrid like the dynamite Doris Day picture Love Me or Leave Me, for which he won an Oscar for Best Story. Fuchs's early literary work went largely unnoticed for years, but when it was rediscovered, John Updike, one of the genuine literary lions, declared that nobody else writes like Daniel Fuchs. I think of him as a natural, a poet who never had to strain after a poetic effect, a magician who made the magic look almost too easy. Now, thanks to this praise, Fuchs was hailed retroactively as one of the great Jewish American novelists of the 1930s, and many critics suddenly bemoaned that his talent had been squandered in Hollywood. But Fuchs brushed that off, commenting later in his life that, "I liked it in Hollywood, and I stayed on. I found the life most agreeable." Words a serious novelist is never supposed to say. Now, later this year, we'll have the Noir Alley premiere of The Gangster, based on Fuchs's 1937 novel, Low Company. Now, I've heard from more than a few people that Paul Henreid not only produced Hollow Triumph, he directed a lot of it himself. And that wouldn't surprise me at all. While continuing to act, Henreid developed into a reliable and prolific director, making features like A Woman's Devotion and Dead Ringer, more than 24 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, in addition to many other TV shows, and even a pair of Beat Generation JD movies, Live Fast, Die Young, and Girls on the Loose. And I hope you've seen the lovely tribute his daughter, Monica Henreid, recently provided for TCM. She's been working on a full-scale documentary about her father's extraordinary life, and I am definitely looking forward to that. I hope all of you die-hard noir fans out there are still tweeting up a storm, getting Noir Alley trending on Twitter every weekend. I have no idea what that actually means, but anytime classic films get more attention than contemporary politics, I am all for it. So check us out on Facebook, too. Next week, we'll be taking an exciting train trip, Chicago to Los Angeles, in the last great film from the House of Noir, RKO. Be here for The Narrow Margin, We leave the station Saturday at midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. But if you miss it, we'll make the trip again Sunday morning, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Until then, I'll be at the bar, perfecting the recipe for Noir Alley's new signature cocktail, A Bitter Little World. You'll find me right here next week. Conscious, I hope.